And I said, I never wanted you to lose your life. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I wish that didn't happen to you. I wish I could go back and erase that day. I regret that day. And he said, what about your life? And I said, my life? I don't have a life. I don't know what having a life is like.
All right, Pej. Pej, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
So born in Germany, Berlin, but grew up in Utah from 5 years old to 15 years of age. And then we moved out to California, and it's been Orange County and Los Angeles ever since.
Tell me about your family growing up.
I had good parents, very good parents. They were educated. They met in Germany, and then when we moved to Utah, we were a family unit. We came together, and over a period of time, unfortunately, there was a lot of tension within the home, and mom and dad decided to split up when I was 17.
17?
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe your childhood in general?
My childhood was good. It was very, very good. My dad and mom, they were very nurturing. They did their best. I was a latchkey child. Unfortunately, when I say turmoil within the home, my dad was very hot or cold. You knew when he was happy, but when he wasn't happy, the house wasn't happy. And so he was abusive at times with his loud voice, and sometimes with his hands, and sometimes with objects.
Yeah, that makes it hard for a kid.
Absolutely.
I don't think dads realize how heavy that is on a kid. It affects them for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What kind of teenager were you?
Well, I was already abusing or kind of messing around with substances at a very young age in Utah because I felt like an outcast amongst a lot of Mormon, American, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people.
Right.
I kind of just gravitated towards other people that felt like outcasts. So we were huffing gasoline, we were smoking weed and drinking, and then when we moved to California, it was open season. I mean, everybody out here, it just seemed like a lot more people were having a lot of fun. And so my teenage years were, they were fun, like at least with drugs and alcohol. But it got really, really bad after I turned 17. I had a gruesome car accident where I was driving a car one morning. Car was packed up with a bunch of my friends and my sister, and we were on our way to school. And I hit somebody that was on their bicycle, and he came out in front of my car before I could even hit the brakes fast enough, and the kid's bike and body went over the hood of my car into the windshield. Windshield shattered, and the kid's body was flung over a minivan headfirst into the ground. And I got out of the car, and everything went into slow motion. Tasted blood trickling down from my forehead from the impact of the windshield. Saw all my friends; they had blood all over their faces, and I thought, did I just hit a human body? And I went around and looked around the side of the minivan and saw the kid laying face down with blood gushing out the top of his head. And so my teenage years took a downward spiral, both emotionally, mentally, and obviously because of this, I didn't know how to process. So I just engulfed myself in drugs and alcohol, and then ended up going to juvenile hall for many reasons, but that's where I spent some time in juvie for a while, and then later on it turned into other things. Parents split up, so I was between homes. And
was the accident your fault?
In the end, it was partially my fault. It was partially his fault, and it's partially the city's fault because of an obstructed stop sign. So, but I always had it in my head that it was my fault. I had people that he went to a different high school than me, so people would come up and say, "Hey, aren't you the kid that killed the kid on the bike?" And I would get really upset about that. And in my head, it was ingrained in my head that it was all my fault, but really it was an accident. It wasn't like, well, I went out there with the intention of killing somebody that day.
Did he do something wrong on the bicycle to put himself in the front of your car?
Yeah, he darted out in the street on his bike while we were en route to school.
And then you had a stop sign that you couldn't see?
The stop sign was before where he darted out. So there was no stopping anyway, but judging by the speed that I was going in and where he came from, and back then kids weren't wearing bicycle helmets, he just came out of nowhere. So he shouldn't have been riding in the street, but I was put at blame because of how fast I was going. And then by the time we got to the intersection, the kid's body was already on top of my car, and that's when I hit the minivan and the kid's body was flung over. So, and then, this case went on for years, as far as insurance purposes and things like that. It was like 4 years until they finally came to
It's crazy how
conclusion.
One event like that can change so many people's lives.
Absolutely. He didn't die right away either. He was put on life support for about 3 or 4 days, and then his mom was contemplating to keep him alive or not. And she knew that if she kept him alive, he would have been a vegetable for the rest of his life. So she decided to pull the plug, and so he lost his life. And again, that's, when I ended up in juvenile hall, I thought to myself, what is going on? I remember I said I wanted to take my life, so they put me on suicide watch in the psych portion of this place. And, I didn't know what I was doing anymore. That's where I was actually, I was in my cell for about 21 hours a day, just counting the bricks on the wall, losing my mind, and just wondering, like, what's this all about? Why'd that kid die? Why am I here? I was somewhat of a normal kid not that long ago.
And that's when the drug use picked up?
Drug use was already in effect before that, but this became an ultimate excuse for me to just go hard and heavy because I didn't want to feel anymore. I wanted to just numb out. And
Were drugs part of that accident?
No, I was actually sober that morning, shockingly, because I was never really sober much during those times, but I was sober that morning. I had not used anything. So, yeah, they wanted to charge me with a vehicular manslaughter charge without gross negligence. Had I been under the influence, it would have been with gross negligence.
But ultimately, what happened? You did not get convicted of anything other than...
No, I got into a bunch of trouble before they put me in there. So everything kind of added up, and I think they wanted to make a point and say, hey, you've got this riding over your head, and on top of that, you keep getting in trouble. So I was looking at being in there for a while, but then they let me out early, and I went to my mom's for a while, and then I went to my dad's if it wasn't working out at my mom's because I was using, drinking, partying.
But just taking someone's life is or being involved in taking someone's life is...
It's heavy.
It's heavy, yeah.
Very heavy. I mean, it's something I carried with myself all throughout the rest of my teenage years, all throughout my young adulthood. I got into using heavily towards, 17, 18, 19. There's a lot of cocaine, a lot of crack. Back in the 80s, it was freebasing. That's what we were doing. And then hallucinogens, that was a great escape, most definitely. I did that to avoid the turmoil within the home and also just to not feel, just to numb out. And by the time I was 18, my dad and I had it out physically, but now at this point, I could hold my own. I was big enough, and I put my hands on my dad, and it scared him, and he decided to move to Iran. He said, "I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I'm not obligated to you anymore. I've provided for you your whole life. You can go to school if you want. You can take over this apartment, but I'm out." And my mom moved up here to Santa Monica, and here I was, this 18-year-old kid, still wet behind the ears, no home or life training, and I was engulfed in alcoholism and addiction. So I did what I knew how to do best. I listened to a certain type of music that talked about how to make money. I dropped out of college almost immediately. I was always loaded. I couldn't do school. I tried to work in the workplace. That wasn't working. So I started distributing substances, drugs. I was a drugstore cowboy. This was the late 80s, entering into the 90s. It was a time where we didn't have friends that were overdosing on fentanyl and dying within 5 seconds. We were going to raves and nightclubs and strip clubs, and became a pretty lifestyle all throughout my young adulthood. I lived between here in Venice Beach and also Orange County, just selling drugs all over the place.
And that continued for...
All throughout my 20s.
All throughout your 20s.
I mean, I even started a clothing line that seemed to do well for a while. Unfortunately, I had no business sense because I never went to school for business. And so most of the money that was funneled into this clothing line was from drug sales. And by the time I was 30 years old, I had started to create some wreckage for myself. I had people that were after me, drug dealers. On top of that, I became my own worst and best customer. And so I moved back in with my mom for a while and tried to make it work, but I just couldn't. I was really bad. I was really bad. I got arrested. I got her house raided. I'd been in, at this point, 6 different raids, 2 in my own homes. The cops were always on me, but I got her house raided by the Orange County Methamphetamine Task Force. And they thought that I was manufacturing meth, and I was about to, but I hadn't got there yet. But they caught up to me, and they ended up locking me up again. And so, it was bad times.
Yeah. So how old are you now?
I'm 54.
54. And your 30s and 40s were?
My 30s, I wasn't sober until I was 35. My mom had it with me. By the time I was 34, she basically just told me, listen, you're on drugs, and you can go get help, and we can do that for you, or you can leave. And my big ego went right out the door, and I decided to go live out of my car, and I was a homeless man living on Harbor Boulevard in Costa Mesa. Had nothing going for me. My mom had changed the locks on her doors of her house. She didn't trust me. And so I tried to go do the homeless thing for a while, and that wasn't really working. I mean, addiction had me. I was in the grips of addiction, and I just couldn't live. I didn't know how to live in the world. And then finally I got to a point where I tried to go dry out on a friend's couch, and my version of detoxing was not to do heroin, meth, and coke, but I could still smoke weed and drink, and that's not detoxing. I'm still not. I didn't know what recovery really consisted of. I'd been introduced to recovery throughout my life. When I was 17, there was a priest that would bring an AA panel into juvie, and then later on, I'd go on court cards to 12-step meetings and just sit in there and think, like, what is this? I would never subscribe to this. And by the time I was 35, I called my mom for help, and she had me call this gentleman named Max, and that guy led me to a house of another gentleman who I'd actually met 5 years before but wanted nothing to do with, and his name was Sia. God rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but that man, he showed me a new way of life. He was like a father figure, a recovery coach, and just a beautiful human being. He was an angel placed in my path, not once but twice. They say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and he certainly appeared yet one more time in my life.
What age was this?
35. I turned 36 in his house. It was a recovery home that kind of functioned as a treatment style of home. He had a therapist that would come in once a week. He ran groups, and although I wasn't serious at first, and he could see through that, he ended up turning me inside out, man. I'm telling you, he just showed me. He would say, "You're so inauthentic. You're inauthentic about your own inauthenticity." And I'm like, "What does that even mean?" He said, "You're so full of shit about. You're so full of shit. You're full of shit about being full of shit." And I said, "Oh, whoa, this guy can see right through me." And he strongly encouraged me to go to school, and I told him I don't do good in school. I've tried college. I even went to the Art Institute for a while. I'm an artist, and I failed that. He said, "Well, were you sober when you went?" And I said, "No, I was never sober in school." He said, "Well, maybe if you try it while you're sober, you might do well." And so, lo and behold, I went to Saddleback College, and in their Human Services Department and Drug and Alcohol Studies, I ended up studying and doing really well, finished top of my class, got on the Dean's List, 4.0 student, and that's where my journey in recovery started.
Tell me about that.
I started working in an adolescent facility in Orange Park Acres down in Orange County with a bunch of kids that reminded me a lot of myself, and I started seeing things that I'd never seen before, hearing things that I'd never heard before as far as the way that kids were using substances. especially smoking pills, things that they would get out of their grandma's medicine cabinet. And Department of Justice decided to come and take me out of that role. The live scan came back late, and they said, we don't want you working with kids because you were a meth salesman before. So I tried to fight that case. I did. I beat it, and I got put on a probationary period. But in that time, I started working in adult treatment. And because of my schooling and everything, I held a lot of positions. Case manager, I loved doing that. Program director, program manager, did some admissions, and then I wanted to take it to the next level. I went on to wanting to become an interventionist. I was taught by the best people that were renowned and seasoned interventionists. And on top of that, I, during the pandemic, right before it, I'd gotten into podcasting and became an influencer on many different platforms. And so that's kind of what I've been doing the last 10 years, about over a decade now. I've been doing interventions all over the country and globally.
Helping others is a way to help yourself, right?
I love it. Never a dull moment in my life. Plus, I opened some recovery homes too. They are a men's house and a women's house that are very much modeled after the house that I got sober in. And we're no nonsense. We come with love, but we are assertive and strict. And I'm watching miracles every day.
What's the name of your place?
The men's house is called the Essence House, and the women's house is called Limitless Journey.
And this is in Orange County?
Those ones are Orange County. I did have some homes up here in Westwood and in L.A. I love what I do. I watch miracles all the time come through our homes. There are people from all walks of life. Some are from well-to-do families. Some are from homelessness. Some are fentanyl addicts that are now living. And a lot of meth psychosis. I've got a few people that will probably never be normal again. There's a guy that walks in the backyard all day in circles and hears the voices, even medicated, but he's good. Like he's putting himself through school, and the conversations with him are very interesting.
What is the secret to an intervention?
The secret to intervention is being able to meet people where they're at, understanding that everybody has a story, and everyone that's placed in my path is carrying a lot of trauma, and it reminds me a lot of myself and why I used the way I used. And so when I meet them where they're at, I've got to be able to try to make them understand that their lives aren't working. And so my job is to intervene, however that may be, wherever they are in their life, and somehow be able to connect with them on a cellular level and be able to get them to understand that there is a better life out there. And often I will self-disclose and let them know that I come in peace, and I want to try to help you and show you a better way of life. And again, there's so many different people that find me, mostly through my social media, a lot of my YouTube stuff, but families that want me to try to help their loved one, or friends that have come together. So I'll find myself on the streets of Chicago, or I was just in Detroit, searching for people in tents. I got 2 cases I'm working on here in Skid Row. As a matter of fact, after today, I'll be down there. And just trying to help these people. And the thing is how do you talk to somebody that's in psychosis? They're already going to think that you're with them. And when I say I come in peace, I don't walk up to lots of them all the time and say, hey, I'm an interventionist and your family's brought me to try to save your life. Often I have to connect with them in a sense where I let them know, hey, I was homeless once. I know what it's like to live down here. How do you stay warm at night? How do you eat? Do you have a plan? How long do you want to be down here? And then over a period of time, if I can get to know them better, giving them some hope. That's what I think the goal of an intervention is, to be able to connect with them and give them hope and let them know that there is a different way of living.
What percentage of the interventions succeed, and which one? How many fail?
Well, that's a great question. I'd say 70 to 80% actually succeed in getting intervened on and going and getting help. I'm part of a team of interventionists, and so they don't there's the vast majority of them will not really take on meth cases because people that are under the influence of meth are not a sure shot one time, like we do an intervention and they're going to get the help that they want today. But some of my cases are ongoing. And so I'll work on them for a few months, sometimes a few years. And those ones can become a success if we get them to a point of being broken enough and feeling down enough to wanting to get the help. Sometimes it has to be during a resting point because it's really hard coming down from meth. So I work with them. I try to build enough rapport with them on the first time that I meet them to where I can keep checking on them and checking in with them. And but like I said, there's so many miracles that I see. I've been seeing a craze lately with millennials between probably the age of 35 and 42 where they're very addicted to ketamine. Ketamine is obviously, it's become more popular in the last 5, 6, 7 years for mental health if microdosed, but there are people that are abusing ketamine like we used to abuse cocaine in the 80s and 90s. And I've seen some people come out of that, but some people that really stay stuck on it. There's a lot of people that are doing nitrous oxide. This is a substance that it's a cheap thrill. It's short-lived, and we used to call it hippie crack back in the 90s, but it's basically something that most of these people that I know that are really stuck on it were using other substances in the past, but right now it's something that doesn't show up in their drug tests and something that they become very addicted to the point of being out of their mind, and it's captivating, if you will, right? It's just, for some reason, it just gets them, and it's so accessible. They buy it in smoke shops and things like that, and so it's not that hard to get. It's costly, but also it warps their minds. And then obviously we've got the fentanyl craze.
And ketamine is not illegal?
Ketamine can be obtained a lot easier if you have a doctor, but I don't know that I think it's illegal if you're distributing it, definitely without a prescription.
Do you have regrets in your life?
When I was in treatment, my one and only time, I did a psychodrama, and that was to relive the day of my car accident. And they placed a kid on the ground and put a bed sheet over him. It was one of the clients' 12-year-olds, and had me walk around the room and go and just talk about the day of the car accident, smell of the air, what was playing on the music in the car. And I was pouring tears. My mom was sitting there. It was a family group. Everyone was there in a circle. And I remember I got on my knees and put my hand on top of the body because that's what the counselor told me to do. And the counselor asked me, what was the kid's name? And I said, David. He said, tell David how you feel about him losing his life. And I said, I never wanted you to lose your life. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I wish that didn't happen to you. I wish I could go back and erase that day. I regret that day. And he said, what about your life? And I said, my life? I don't have a life. I don't know what having a life is like. He said, well, do you want to make a commitment? And I said, yeah, I want to make a commitment. He said, what do you want to commit to? And I said, I want to help every single addict, alcoholic of every age, race, creed, and color one day at a time for the rest of my life. And I knew in that moment that either I'm going to do this or I'm not. I'm a total loser. I looked at my mom's shaking face with tears pouring. The whole room was in tears. Just a Persian group of people. Everyone was. There's a lot of emotion in that room. But after that day, when I went to bed in rehab that night, I woke up the next morning. I felt like 1,000 pounds had been lifted off of my back. And I don't have any more regrets. No, I love my life. I really do. I have a purpose now.
You feel like this is helping you stay clean too?
Yes. I mean, between therapy, lots of therapy, and going through the 12-step process, I'm a whole new person now. I'm the person I was meant to be, as opposed to the facade that I was caught up in. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor. I got cancer 10 years ago, walked through that. I've had a lot of tumultuous relationships, and I believe that those are all learning experiences too. But yeah, I mean, I go to places where I see a lot of people using my old drugs of choices, and there's no desire, nothing about it makes me interested in doing it. I want to save the person because I know that they're caught up. I have a purpose.
But why is crystal meth so difficult? You mentioned earlier.
For people to quit?
Yeah.
I believe crystal meth is more of a psychological drug. It's not something that our bodies are dependent upon. Like, we don't really need it, as opposed to opiates and benzodiazepines. So when people do meth, they think they need it. And there are many different reasons that people do meth. Some people do it for drug-driven sex. Some people do it because they want to fix stuff that they never really finish. Some people get into the underbelly of the beast, the crime world. I was very much involved in that. It was like a grind. And some people just want to escape trauma. They just don't want to feel. And I think that all of that coupled together is one of the reasons that people get so caught up in the meth world. You'd be surprised. I get so many phone calls on a daily basis from all around the world, texts and calls from people that want to get off of meth. And a lot of them are less fortunate, so I created this thing. It's a Zoom class I do bi-weekly for free, and it's called Tweaker College 101. And I basically try to help people that can't go to treatment for whatever reason. Some don't. They don't have the ability to go. And how many people show up, and I try to teach them everything within 2 hours that would be taught to them in treatment anyway, and then how to come out of that and what to do with themselves after. And I do this 3-day challenge. If you can get back past the 3 days of detoxification, then I'll show you what to do next. Let's get you through the 3 days, and once they've done that, I do my best just to show them how to become a recovered human.
What do you find the biggest core issue is for a lot of these people? Is it the childhood trauma?
All of them.
All of them?
Pretty much all, yeah. Some of them will tell you they don't have any trauma, but then a lot of things start to unfold, and some people open up more and some don't. I see a lot of people relapse too.
Pej, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all of this?
Most important lesson that I've learned is that until I didn't find my purpose in life, I would never make it. And once I did, I realized that I've got a duty to try to help humanity. And that's where I'm at with it.
All right. Pej, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, too.
I wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
You're doing lots of good help out there.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.